Hey everybody, and welcome back to another book review. So, back in my car, I'm about to go get my hair done, but I just finished the last bit of this book on audiobook, and I couldn't not share right away because not because I'm gonna forget or anything, but I just I want to like this book so bad. Anyways, the book is called Yellow Wife by Sadeqa Johnson. And the author has been on my book list for a little bit. I've got a couple books by her that have been on my list. And so I just started with the one that was furthest down the list because, as you guys know, I'm working backwards with the stuff that's been on my list for a little while. I don't, there's a lot in this book, and I think some of it is that this isn't necessarily a style she frequently writes in. But two things. So let's go back. The book Yellow Wife is about a young woman named Phoebe, Dolores Brown. And it's actually it's complete fiction, but it's based on historic fact. And so Phoebe is a yellow girl. She's biracial. She almost is white passing though. She's very, very light. And she grew up on a plantation, but she was never, even though she technically was a slave because her mother's a slave, and especially in Virginia, slavery is based on the condition of the mother. So if the mom's enslaved, then the child is enslaved, right? And so she grows up with this idea that she is not enslaved. And her mom frequently tells her, you're a slave in name only, not in your mind. Which I do like that phrase. And I think that is something that we kind of forget, that in this period, in the period of American enslavement, that was actually frequently told to kids. You're a slave in name only, not in your mind. So don't let it, control you. Not for everyone, but for a good chunk of people. And so in the story, she her father, who is her owner, of course, he decides one day that he's going on a trip, and he takes her mom with him. And while they're gone, she has to live in the big house with her dad's wife, who's a white woman. And this wife really doesn't like her, because she knows that you are my husband's child, even though they're very close in age. So he married a woman much younger than him. She's the wife is 24, 25, and Phoebe at the start of the story is about 17, 18. And so anyway, so she has to live in the house with the wife, and it comes to a head, and she oversleeps one day, and then the wife dumps her chamber pot full on top of Phoebe in retaliation, and Phoebe smacks her, which no. And so the wife is like, well, you decided to do this. And then word comes back that there's been a carriage crash, and Phoebe's dad and her mom were in the crash, and they're both very, very injured. And so the mom made it back, but the dad did not. He was so injured that he stayed at the doctor's. And so when her mom comes back, she dies. And so on the day of her funeral, the mistress of the house sends the slave traders after Phoebe and take her to be sold. And they take her to, in the book, what is referred to as Lapier's Jail, the Devil's Half Acre, which is actually a real place. It was not owned by a guy named Lapier. It was, I cannot remember the guy's name. Starts with an L though. And the Devil's Half Acre is a location in Richmond where it was a slave prison, but also an auction house. And so what would happen is people would send their slaves to this man, and he would beat the tar out of them and then send them back or sell them. And so Phoebe is sent to this place with the expectation that she'll be sold and she'll flex the price. And what happens is the owner of the jail, Reuben Lapier, decides that he wants to keep her for himself. And so he keeps her. At this point, she's already pregnant with her first child by a man from her home, who, like, they had planned to get married and all the things, and he had to run away. So she has her first child at the jail, and he is, of course, treated like a slave because he is actually darker, and so, like, it's obvious, like, his father was enslaved. But also, technically, Phoebe is enslaved. So, but then after that, she has children through her new master, Reuben Lapierre. And then the rest of the story is, you know, just about her existence at this jail, and, like, her just kind of dealing with this idea, this concept of, you know, she lives in this horrendous place, and she has to endure while also raising children. Everything she does is really for the benefit of her children. At the end of the story, the man that she loves, his name is Essex, by the way, he winds up getting caught and imprisoned in the jail, and they, of course, beat the tar out of him. And then she devises another escape plan. She did his original escape plan, but she devises another escape plan for him and their son. And so they eventually do get to escape. That's kind of, quote unquote, the happy ending of the story. So the reason, first off, like, let's start with the obvious, which is, I know I've heard other people say this too, and I'm kind of, like, beginning to get into that mindset as well. Like, can we come up with some happier stories for Black people? I mean, like, it doesn't always have to be, you know, slavery and enslavement and stuff, you know. So there's that side of it. But also, I don't like this character. I don't like her. And I get, like, everything she does is for her children, and she's doing what she knows best. However, there are a couple times in the book where I'm like, oh, I could hit you with the frying pan because you stupid. Like the first time that she tries to get a message out. So in the book, after Essex shows up at the jail imprisoned, he wants her to send a letter to his friend in Boston to help, because that's who he had connected with when he ran away the first time. And she writes this letter, and she's like, I'll try to figure out a way to smuggle it out. And she decides to ask her dressmaker to smuggle this letter out. And an earlier part in the story, it's established that the dressmaker does not like her because she's colored, right? But, like, once the dressmaker realizes that she's married more or less to Mr. Lapierre, and has children by him, she kind of respects her a little bit more. But, like, there's still that line of, like, she don't like you because she's being forced to dress a quote-unquote Black woman, right? And so that's the person that she asks to sneak this letter out, and is, like, shocked when this lady turns on her and, like, turns the letter over to her husband. Like, girl, like, why are you surprised? Oh my gosh. I was like, first off, that would not have been the person I would have trusted. Like, let's start with that. But, like, oh gosh, there's, like, a whole chapter where I was just like, I'm gonna hit her with a frying pan. Like, outside of that, it was, like, is an interesting story. It was just very, very dark, a little too dark for, like, my mood right now. But also, like, an interesting history that I kind of already knew about of, you know, there were a lot. And the author in the epilogue, or the author's note, I should say, she talks about some of these other characters and stuff that are mentioned in the story. They are actually real people, of other jailers and people that were slave traders who are white men that married colored women because they were almost white passing. And then further talking about, at least in the case of Phoebe, she has these children by this man, and those children get sent to varying finishing schools around the country, but they pass as white in order to get into the school. In the story, when Phoebe sends her kids away to the school, one of the girls doesn't go because she was too young at the time. But then, you know, when it's time for her to go, she's like, I don't want to go because I don't want to pass as white, because, like, I'm not going to deny my heritage, which I don't know how many people did that. But I just thought it was an interesting kind of take. But like overall, I don't know. I didn't necessarily want a happy ending. I knew it was going to be a rough book because, like, Yellow Wife, like, hello, it was going to be a rough book. I knew it was going to be a rough book, but, like, it was worse than what I wanted it to be. Interesting story, definitely, like, in my realm of, like, things that I frequently research: women slave owning, women in the period of American enslavement, and, like, what women's roles were. This is a fun, interesting thing to read about, but oh my goodness, I could have slapped this character so many times. Like, and then the last thing, and this is like super minor, but it's because I spend so much time in the 19th century and reading stuff from the 19th century. Like, if you guys that have been following me didn't know, I do have a degree in American history, and I specialize in the 19th century. The language that was used in this book was so modern, it was painful. Like, the amount of times a character was just like, okay, no, you wouldn't have said that. Like, okay, does come about in the 19th century. Let's start with that. It does come about in the 19th century. And with the time period of this book, okay is technically a phrase. But based on the characters and based on their status in varying ways, okay is not the word that they are going to be using. And the frequency of using okay was wild to me. And there were a couple other words that I was just like, whoo, that read so modern. Like, it was clearly written by somebody in the 21st century. Like, the language was just rough. It was just, I was like, okay. Also, English conventions, especially because there's this conversation in the story about the fact that these characters are using proper English because their mom wants them to speak properly, even though they're enslaved, right? And like, they're like, I don't like, and then people are telling them, like, no, you can't speak that way because you're enslaved, so you have to speak, like a slave, right? And it just the way that it was written, though, like, I was like, well, it's not even that they're speaking like a slave or not like a slave. It's that they are speaking not like the 19th century. I just really don't like when books are written about a time period and like the author talks about, like, I've done all this research and I've taken all this time and all the things, and the language doesn't match. It's like a small thing. But there you have it. So there you have it. Long book review because I just I wanted to like this book so bad. I'm giving it a 3. The story is fine. Very interesting concept. Especially knowing how many of the characters are based on real people that this, like, legitimately happened to. But I can't get with the language, or I just wanted to slap the character with a frying pan so many times. Like, girl, stop it! So yeah, there you have it. As always, thank you for watching. If you guys have any book suggestions, feel free to send them my way so I can add them to the not shrinking pile, because the pile got bigger. But I'm still working my way from the bottom to the top. And hopefully everybody has a wonderful week. It is springtime, pretty much. At least here in Indiana, it's been very, very warm. And so we are heading into the spring season and flowers and bulbs and all the things. So hopefully everyone's getting out and enjoying some good weather, and I will see you in the next book review. Bye!